Hey. Hey, Mary Grace.
Hey, hi
Hey.
Sue.
How are you
This is
doing?
Mary Grace I'm doing good. How are you? I'm
Good.
sorry there seemed to
Good.
be
I'm doing
no
well.
audio um with my Oregon Trail video. I'm not sure what was going on
Yeah.
there, but
I'm not sure. I didn't hear it either, but maybe everybody else out there did. Let's hope they did anyway. Yeah.
uh okay. Well, anyway, hey, so we're here. We wanted to tell you a little bit about Oregon tonight. I'm pretty close to Oregon. I'm in Washington State. Sue, how close are you to Oregon?
I am not very close. I'm in Kentucky and I have never been to Oregon. So I'm really looking to you to tell me all about it so that when I do make it out there one day that I'll know all the right places to go and all the history about it. Yeah.
All
Or
right.
at least the highlights.
All right, that sounds good. That sounds good to me. Uh, yeah, well, we wanted to bring a little bit of Oregon history to you guys, and I'm pretty close to Oregon. In fact, actually, I'm like 4 hours from Portland, as the crow flies, so they say. And Oregon and Washington is, if anybody was with us last week, Oregon and Washington used to actually be one big territory. So. Um, that is quite a large area, but Oregon is, in comparison, I looked for some comparisons, and Oregon is only slightly larger than the UK. So there's kind
Wow.
of a comparison for you. Yeah.
That's
And
That's pretty impressive. Yeah. So when
yeah,
did Oregon kind of become its own area, its own state or territory?
Oregon became a state actually this month, February 14th, 1849.
Oh
Oregon
wow.
became a state. Yeah. Is there audio now? Can everybody hear us? Sounds like Chris says there's audio. Sounds like there's audio now. Ginger says, yep, there's audio. So maybe
Awesome.
we'll back up again. Blaine Price says there's good evening, ladies. Russ says there's audio. Yes. Okay. So we're
Awesome.
gonna move forward. Yay. Sorry, we had maybe some technical difficulties, but we're all back
Well,
in and here.
as, as Russ likes to say, this is live, folks, unscripted. So here we are. We're just going to roll with
it. Yeah.
Okay.
So anyway,
yeah.
Here we are, Sue and Mary, and so this is the first time that Sue and I have actually done a live together, and so let us know. Blaine says we're loud and clear. That's what we want to be, loud and clear.
Awesome. Hey Blaine, how you doing? Loud and clear. That's
yeah. Okay, so if just to backtrack, really, we were just giving you a comparison on how big Oregon is. It's slightly larger than all of the UK, and at one time, Oregon was combined with Washington, but now since 1849, it's been its own state. And one thing I thought was interesting is that Oregon, interesting word. Does anybody have any ideas? Don't Google it.
Yeah.
What
That was
Oregon
actually going to
might
be one
mean.
of my
Sue,
questions. Yeah. Yeah. I
give
have
me a guess.
absolutely Oregon. My first thought would be a native word or a word that means something in maybe another language. The Spaniards came there first. Maybe so many of the native tribes, they were there. Maybe it derived from their language, but honestly, I don't know. So,
Yes. So
I hope you do.
I do. I do.
I know you do.
And
I know you do.
yeah. So it's kind of fun. The earliest evidence of the name Oregon and Oregon as it's spelled Oregon, Oregon, but it has Spanish origins, and the term Oregon or Orejon, meaning big ear.
Oh,
big ear.
well,
yeah. Okay. So
there's a story there. There's a good story with that.
I'm sure what I know is that it comes from the historical chronicle that was written about the Columbia River when the Spanish explorers penetrated into the actual North American territory that becomes the Viceroyalty of New Spain. So Oregon, meaning the big ear, and it was written in 1598, and it has to do with the Baja of California, and I'm not sure how all of this relates to Oregon, but I thought that was pretty interesting as it goes. So
that would have been the very last thing I would have guessed, the big ear.
Right. Oregon.
Yeah. Is it Oregon or Oregon? Is there a certain way that the natives pronounce it? Like we have Louisville here in Kentucky, and if you are not a native, you pronounce it Louisville, but we pronounce it Louisville. So is Oregon Oregon? Is there
Oregon.
Oregon?
Oregon. Like one Oregon.
One,
Oregon.
like Oregon. Gotcha.
Like Oregon.
Like
Oregon. I
gotcha.
There's like no separation in the Oregon.
Oregon. 2 syllables. Oregon. Oregon. Not Oregon.
Yeah.
I'm trying to make
Right.
it into 3 syllables. We do that in Kentucky.
Okay.
We like to drag
It's a Kentucky
things out.
thing.
Yeah.
Oh,
Apparently.
or you could, or I suppose if you're from Oregon, you're an Oregonian. Does that help?
Oregonian? I would think so.
Like
I
you're
don't know.
Kentuckian?
Kentuckian?
You're Oregonian?
So,
Yeah.
Oregonian?
Right.
I would think so. If someone knows
Right.
that, let us know. But that sounds right.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Interesting.
a little bit of history on Oregon. And actually we, last week we said that Washington was one of the top producers in the Union for apples. Oregon is the top timber producer and has been for many, 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 many years. Yes. And I find that fascinating.
I do too.
Yeah.
I do too. And has been for many years. Who knew? I guess Oregonians did.
The Oregonians did, yes. All of those Oregonians, yes. So the history of Oregon is much similar to Washington because Oregon, of course, had trappers arriving originally for the seals. We have the Pacific Northwest out here with in the Pacific Northwest, we have the Pacific Ocean with the seals and the otters, and of course then beavers, much like Washington. And that was the original draw out here. And of course, the Oregon Trail.
Right. I think most people, when they think of Oregon, that's one of the top 2, maybe. Oregon Trail is what they think of. Not timber,
right?
But that's interesting to know. But the Oregon Trail, definitely, yeah. So when were some of the first trappers, traders, fur traders in that area? About the same, I would imagine, as Washington, which you all talked about last week.
Right, but the Oregon Trail was originally laid out by fur traders.
That's how they followed the Oregon Trail, much like our Warriors Path and traces that the buffalo made. Then the fur traders, and then the Oregon Trail followed that.
Right.
The
fur traders actually built the Oregon Trail, so
right.
That's how the Oregon Trail was built, and later then we have the Lewis and Clark expedition, and later we have the missionaries and then early immigrants following the Oregon Trail out to Oregon, right?
Okay.
So, and actually, I wanted to play, if we could, and hopefully it'll have audio, Russ's Lewis and Clark video for you guys, because the Lewis and Clark expedition was executed by Thomas Jefferson. Excuse me, he's the one that commanded Lewis and Clark to do this, and then they started. That goes east to west, and they end up in Astoria, Oregon, essentially at Fort Clatsop. And so I want to talk to you a little bit about that. If Jordan would give you that video, hopefully it has audio. Jordan. Okay.
That's a great video. Yeah.
From right here is where their epic adventure began. Hey everybody, this is Russ from Family Tree Nuts, and I'm at the Falls of the Ohio State Park outside of Clarksville, Indiana, on the banks of the Ohio River, just across the river from Louisville, Kentucky. I'm at the location of the retirement home of General George Rogers Clark. Many of us are familiar with the words Lewis and Clark. They're part of American culture and heritage, and right here is where their journey began. In 1803, President Thomas Jefferson worked out a deal with France that became known as the Louisiana Purchase. President Jefferson appointed his aide, Meriwether Lewis, to lead an expedition to explore the new Louisiana Purchase and try to find a waterway to the Pacific Ocean. Meriwether Lewis asked his friend William Clark to help co-lead the adventure. William Clark was staying with his brother, General George Rogers Clark, when he received a letter from Meriwether Lewis requesting him to go on the adventure. While Lewis was back east making preparations for the journey, William Clark began to recruit men from Louisville and used his brother's house as a base camp. It surely didn't hurt recruitment that General George Rogers Clark was the conqueror of the Old Northwest, the Washington of the West, and the founder of Louisville. The men that William Clark recruited became known as the 9 Young Men from Kentucky. Their names were William Bratton, a blacksmith and a gunsmith. Later on the journey, Bratton came down with a terrible back injury, and he was cured by an Indian sweat bath. John Coulter, who later became the first white man to see the steam vents and boiling mud pits in the area that became Yellowstone National Park. The brothers Joseph Field and Reuben Field, who on the journey took part in the fight with the Blackfoot Indians. Charles Floyd, the quartermaster of the trip, and the only member to die while on the adventure. George Gibson, he played the fiddle on the journey and was used as an interpreter with the Native Americans using sign language. Nathaniel Pryor, who was a cousin of Charles Floyd and the first sergeant of the group. Later on the journey, he was asked to sit in on a court-martial of Privates John Collins and Hugh Hall. They were accused of stealing whiskey and drinking on duty, and they were sentenced to 100 lashes. Another was George Shannon, the youngest on the adventure. Once, he got separated from the group for 16 days and almost starved to death. And John Shields, the second oldest of the expedition. Later on, he spent some time hunting with Daniel Boone in Missouri. Also, an original member of the Corps of Discovery was a man named York. York was an enslaved man belonging to William Clark since childhood. He performed his duties like any other man on the journey, and he has several interesting stories from the adventure. The Corps of Discovery set off from here on October the 26th, 1803. Imagine their excitement. Now, I know I've just scratched the surface on the epic adventure that was the Lewis and Clark expedition, but I wanted to take you where they stepped off, right here, from the home of General George Rogers Clark. The names Lewis and Clark are forever ingrained into American culture, and here's where the adventure began. Family Tree Nuts, let our nuts find the nuts in your family tree. Like what you see? Make sure you follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And subscribe to our YouTube channel. Don't forget to click the little bell so you get notifications as to when we post new videos. And you can find out more about us and contact us at familytreenuts.org.
That's awesome.
I love that.
Lewis and Clark. Yeah, I love that
You
too.
gotta love
I love it.
Right?
You're actually not far, I think, from where they ended up, right?
I'm
I
not.
know you're in Washington, but you're really not that far.
Right. So
and
they
I'm
end
not
up
far
in
from where they started. Actually, I'm not far from where he just shot that video from where they started.
So the beginning and the end. That's so cool.
Exactly.
I mean, it's really quite amazing, to be honest with you. And so they end up in Fort Clatsop, near Fort Astoria, and they're final destination is the home of a lot of different things begin. It's where the Astor expedition comes out to in 1811, and John Jacob Astor.
Okay.
Yes, and he starts the
okay,
Pacific Fur Trade Company, right? And in fact, that Astor, John Jacob Astor, is a relative to the Astor that's later on the Titanic and dies.
And died. I was going to say, he didn't survive. Wow.
Right.
Wow. That's two historic events. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So just some different historical connections there, which is kind of interesting. But the 1811 Astor expedition is actually where Astoria gets its name. So Fort Astoria becomes Astoria, and Fort Clatsop is near there. And then Clatsop, of course, has a lot of different history. And if you could make it out to Oregon, I would say there's several places that you should visit, but Astoria would be one. And Portland, it has a lot of diversity and a lot of different there's a lot of diversity in Portland as well. There's a lot of history in Astoria.
I'm taking notes, okay? I'm taking notes, so I'll know where to go.
Do it.
Yeah.
Oh, and you know what comes to mind for Astoria? Little side note, a little bit of pop culture. Now you know how old I am.
I was going to say Astoria
Goonies.
actually sounds Goonies. Okay. I was going to say Astoria sounded familiar. That's where I
the
knew
movie
it from.
Goonies.
Awesome.
It came out like in 1985. It was filmed in Astoria.
That is pretty cool. It's some beautiful scenery out there. And the movie showcased that. That's pretty cool.
Well, but not all of it was okay. So you know the rock that they used, the big rock that they filmed behind, like the pirate ship. That's Haystack Rock, and that's actually at Cannon Beach, which is also in Oregon. And Cannon Beach is absolutely beautiful. But that's Haystack Rock. Just a side note, but anyway,
that's pretty cool.
The jail that they used, that is the Clatsop County Jail where they did the jailbreak. That is an old historical building that Steven Spielberg got and was able to use. The Captain George Flavel museum was used, and that was Mikey's dad's place of business where they went. That house is owned by the Clatsop County Historical Society, and that Captain George Flavel was actually one of the first millionaires in Astoria. He was a tugboat captain. He was of Irish descent. In his family, actually, I'm not sure when he died, but I know his family, like his oldest daughter lived there until like 1933 when she died. That would be a neat place to go. So I'll be doing some filming down in Astoria soon, and I'll have to hit a few of those places. That'll be fun.
Absolutely. That'll be very fun. I love the fact that they were able to use a lot of the historical locations for the movie.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, I'm going to have to rewatch that movie and take all that in and pay better attention. Pay better attention. Yeah, that's awesome.
Right?
That's a fun movie.
Yeah, and Cannon Beach is really a pretty place in Oregon, but so anyway, Fort Astoria turns into Astoria, and the Astors had a a big pull there. They had a lot of influence in Astoria, and they didn't stay out there. They went back to New York, but then the War of 1812 happens, and Britain comes in, and they gain control of the fur companies, and sort of everything changes. And then we were talking about that's when the asters sort of take off. What I totally lost my train of thought, and this is what happens. We were talking about, I got just sidetracked with the Goonies. Gosh, now I'm all excited about the Goonies. I have to rewatch the movie now. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So
no, what I'd like to go back to is the Oregon Trail, because the Oregon Trail is so significant to the immigration of Oregon. And like you said, it's like the top two things that people think of when they think about Oregon. And there was like in 1843, there was a great migration out.
What actually started that big of a migration? What was it that, I mean, I know that a lot of people came into Kentucky for land. So would that have been the same, or and if so, what brought them
there?
There
Were a couple drivers. The year before, the Whitmans had come out and had gone into Washington, and they had left in the dead of winter, and that was a troublesome journey, right? And but they made it, and there were some things that happened after they made it up here. But the Great Migration of 1843, for $1 a person, which was a lot of money in 1843, it was led by John Gant, who was a former U.S. Army captain. He was charging $1 a person, but in the Willamette Valley, there was a they made a law. It was an organic law of Oregon. It was still a territory at the time, that if you were a married couple, you could claim 640 acres. And if you were just a single person, you could claim 320 acres in the Willamette Valley. And so that was a good incentive to make it out to Oregon. And so for $1, you could join a wagon train, and you could make it, if you could make it out. Of course, this was not an easy 2,000-mile journey. You were crossing rivers, you had to pack accordingly, and
many didn't make that. They didn't survive. Yeah. What were some of the causes of their death? I mean, obviously just natural environmental issues, but that would have been a horrendous trip, I would imagine.
Right. Disease, a lot of diphtheria, cholera, typhoid fever, measles. There was native attacks. There was gunshots, not to mention dysentery. On a side note, how many of us played the Oregon Trail when we were kids, right? And none of us wanted to die of dysentery on the Oregon Trail, right? Connie, she said there was a grave every 11 miles, and I mean,
wow,
they were burying them just along the way.
Wow.
Right.
Now, do you know how many miles they were able to cover in a day? I mean, I can't imagine that could be very many miles with wagons.
That's something I don't know, but what I do know is that the women on the trails were so good at keeping journals and writing letters back home that there's actually books and writings that have been found and published. And one that I read that was absolutely fabulous, if anybody's interested, and I actually I had to write down the author. Um, it's Women's Diaries of the Westward Journey, and it's a really good book. It's by Lillian Schleisel, and it's actually on Amazon. And I would highly recommend reading that book. And
I'll be looking that up. That definitely would be worth the read.
It is. It really is. The struggles that they went through, children did not. I mean, children are resilient, but children didn't make it. And,
Wow.
you know, losing their wagon trains in waters and trying to wait out floods. I mean, just, and so many of them did make it. You know, that's the amazing part. So many of our ancestors made it out here. That's the great part. That's the good news.
Is that how your ancestors made it out there? Is that why your family is in that area?
Actually, no.
Oh, wow.
I'm actually only the third and the fourth generation here. I haven't, my roots are not super deep on my mom's side, and then they actually are on my dad's side. My family was all in Ohio until recently.
Oh, okay. You had a much easier. They had a much easier. Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay. I can't imagine the resilience and the determination and the fortitude of what that generation went through, you know, to create a new life for their family, for land, for better opportunities, for I just can't imagine how they had to survive. It's just overwhelming, actually, when you think about that. And thankfully,
and the food,
so many of the females, thankfully, so many of the females wrote those trials down, and we can, even reading it, we can't quite understand it, but it's just mind-boggling to a point when you think about what they persevered.
When I stood in the ruts of those trails, it's absolutely flabbergasting. To be honest with you, it's a real different feeling, and it's really hard to describe. You know, and they've been there, you know, for so long. Yeah, it's really cool. Yeah. So the trail was used for a long time. It was still used during the Civil War. The Pony Express used the trail. It didn't always, not all parts of the trail were used for the Pony Express, but the U.S. Corps of the Topographical Engineers, they used the trail. You know, the trail was used for many different things, and the trail was brilliant, really, until the Transcontinental Railroad came through. And then if you could afford the railroad, then of course you would use the railroad. But many people were still using the trail even when the railroad was there, which is interesting. So yeah, the Oregon Trail is a big definition for the state of Oregon. So
which I think is quite fascinating. We could probably talk forever, most of the night, about the Oregon Trail itself. But what I said earlier, that's probably one of the two things that Oregon's known for. But what would be the second biggest thing that Oregon, do you think, would be known for, other than the timber? That was interesting. But ducks, I hear something about ducks. I think it's familiar.
The Oregon ducks.
Right.
I know we hear a lot about the Oregon ducks.
Right.
If you're in Washington, especially, you hear a lot about the Oregon ducks. I'm a duck. No, Oregon isn't full of ducks, but this is really interesting. The University of Oregon are the Oregon Ducks, and when I was like, you know, everybody from Oregon's a duck. I want to know, what is this? Who are the Oregon Ducks? So Oregon Ducks are part
I always wondered how they got their name. That was so intriguing. A duck.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, they're part of the Pac-12, but they were the webfoots forever and a day, the webfoots, which, I mean, ducks have
Okay.
webfoots. But
Exactly.
they were named after a group of fishermen off the coast of Massachusetts that were actually heroes during the American Revolutionary War. And their descendants settled in the Willamette Valley in the 19th century. And the name stayed with them. And so the webfoots became the ducks. But I thought that's actually a really cool tie to something super special. I mean, the American Revolutionary War and war heroes. That's
Right.
really neat. So
That's
the Oregon
very
Ducks,
neat.
there's like 17 intercollegiate teams that the university has, but their football team, their biggest rival are probably the Oregon Beavers and the Washington State Huskies. But yes, the Ducks are very big. You are usually
Yeah.
a Oregon Duck, or you're a Washington State Husky, or you might be a Beaver. Um, but the Ducks are pretty big in Oregon, and the history of the name is really cool. That's a really cool history. So
I love that connection that you were just talking about, because you talk about uh, transcontinental. I mean, from one coast to the other coast, over a
right,
period of, a century or so, several
right.
generations before they make it out there. But that the connection is just unreal, which I think is what I love about history. The more you dig, the more you find out about it, the more connections that you find. And I think
Right.
that's powerful. Right.
I agree. I agree. And our states on the West Coast are younger than the East Coast, but a lot of our history and a lot of our names and a lot of things that we bring forward come from the East Coast, is as we are finding. And I
That's
think
really
that's really neat.
Well, I think that's interesting, because the ones who would have migrated there, that settled there, they brought their history with them, and so much of that kind of stuck too, and then
Right.
created its own history.
Right. And
Right.
I'm loving all of that. Um, One other thing that Oregon is known for, this is more geographical fact, but if you have heard of Crater Lake, I don't know if any
Right.
of you have heard of Crater Lake. Crater Lake
Actually,
is
yeah.
the deepest lake in the United States. Um,
Oh, wow.
And yeah, and actually that's not too far from me either. Crater Lake is almost 2,000 feet deep, 1,943, I think, to be exact. And it's absolutely beautiful. If you could look up pictures of Crater Lake, it's a gorgeous lake, and you have to hike in. And it's part of the Crater National Park, and um, it's absolutely beautiful. So Oregon, the Oregon has a lot of beautiful places, just like Washington. Um, the
They
it has
have quite a
of course,
diversity too, just like Washington too, don't they? I mean, as far as their terrain, their topography, and everything, they're quite diverse as
yes,
well. Right.
there is an eastern, like we have Eastern Washington and Western Washington, where it's a little drier. They also have that, and then the coastline, and they have sea lion caves, and
Wow.
just some
Sounds like an
some beautiful
outdoors
places.
person. It sounds like someone who loves the outdoors, just the perfect place to be. You have quite a lot of different a variety of things to choose from.
I think so, and some great places to camp, some great places to spend outside, great places to walk on the coast, and of course that Crater Lake, and there's Mount Hood, and yeah, a lot of diversity here, or there. I'm not in Oregon,
Right.
sorry. A lot of diversity in
Right.
Oregon. We still can't tell the difference, right? Um, yeah. So that's, I mean, I think that's a, quite a bit on Oregon. Oregon has one of the largest concentration number, I don't know, number of ghost towns too, towns that were boom towns that were started up and never made it. And so if you're somebody that likes to check out the ghost town situation and check out old towns, that's a good place to go. Oregon.
That's pretty interesting. Talk about diversity.
Yeah.
That's
right.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Right. So I think what ethnicity of people settled in Oregon? Irish, English, German, Martian. There was
Martian.
Thanks, Russ. Martian. Blame it on aliens. I heard that. A video earlier of Russ's. So there was an influx of French for a while, and then during part of the Great Migration, there was a we talked about this earlier, and I forget who it is that came in during the Great Migration. Lord help me. I know, and we are live. That tells you how overloaded.
That's okay. Leave it to Russ to ask a question that's going to take us down a different path. Yeah.
Right.
That's all right. Thanks, Russ.
Right.
Yeah.
Thanks, Russ. I appreciate you. So wonderful.
He's out there shooting some awesome. He's out there shooting some awesome videos. That's why he's not on here tonight too, or one of the reasons. But I've been enjoying those as well. Him and his son, they've been doing a great job.
I know, all over the place. I love it. I love that that Family Tree Nuts can get out and bring everybody these videos. It's absolutely awesome. I enjoy watching them myself. I mean, they're great information. Absolutely great information.
I've started a list already of all the places that I want to travel to. So that was always the big thing growing up in my family is we love to travel, and we always travel to someplace historical. We never got to just go to the beach and like play in the ocean. It was always historical. So every place that he goes, it was a great way to for family, for vacations. It was, to me, it was the perfect blend of a family experience. So I mean, where he's going, it's like now I'm making a list. I know I need to go to Washington. I mean, I have not been to the West Coast, and that definitely is on my bucket list. Yeah, I think I've been to like 42 states, but not out west. So that's where I'm going next. Yeah.
And I knew I would think of it. There was a great big migration of Mormons for quite some time. So there you go, Russ. Russ says he's sunburnt like crazy.
Mormons. Yeah. He got that confused. Instead of Martians, it's Mormons that came out there.
Right. Well, and
awesome.
Sue, I totally appreciate you being on here with me tonight. And next week, I'm going to cover
I've had a blast.
Idaho. And Idaho is pretty interesting. I've already I spent some time there, and then I've done some peeking in on Idaho. So next week we're going to bring you the Panhandle state of Idaho. We'll see what they have in store for us.
Yeah, we don't really hear a whole lot about Idaho, so I'm looking forward to that. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
awesome.
I'm starting with the Pacific Northwest cluster here, and then we'll see where we head from there.
That's awesome.
Well, everybody will have to everybody.
Well, everybody will have to like start thinking of some questions for next week for Idaho.
Yes.
So that they can join in and be a part of this experience. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm looking forward to that. Awesome.
with that, we'll see you next Wednesday at 6 o'clock. And Sue, do you want to take us out of here or me?
I don't mind a bit. Of course, 6 o'clock your time. It would be 9 o'clock in the Eastern Standard Time. Yes. So it's been a blast, Mary Grace. This has been so much fun. Thank you, Russ, for traveling so we could do this. And remember, family tree nuts. Let our nuts find the nuts in your family tree.
Thank you.
What impact did your ancestors have on your country, on your state, on your county, and your community? Do you descend from money, poverty, outlaws, business folks, farmers, or just regular people? Do you have an ancestor that fought for American independence? Did an ancestor raise a rifle for the War of 1812? Did they wear blue or did they wear gray? What did your ancestors look like 100, 150 years ago? What amazing females are in your line? And what impact did they have on their families and their communities? Have your people been in America for almost 400 years? Or are they just a few generations from off the boat? What countries did your ancestors immigrate from? These are questions that almost everyone has, but so few have the answers. As genealogists, we hear almost on a daily basis that I would love to know about my ancestors, but I don't know how to find out. I don't have the time to find out. Or I don't want to pay for those expensive membership fees. We can do it for you. Family Tree Nuts specialize in making family trees for our clients. We have packages big and small to meet most needs and budgets. We can chase one line or multiple lines of your family tree, a few generations, or sometimes hundreds of years. We provide you with detailed, professionally written reports that will be a family treasure forever. Our national team of genealogists have the experience and the networks to make the discoveries that you have always wondered about. Your ancestors are calling out, waiting for you to rediscover them and their stories. Let us help you make it happen.